In all of our lives, we'll all deal with trauma one way or another. We will experience traumatic events that will make us never be able to look at something or any given situation the same way ever again. Today, I want to tell you all about one of the most disappointing days of my life. What is up, you guys? It's Nick here, and today I want to talk to you guys about one of the most disappointing theater experiences I've ever had, for a number of reasons. I want to tell you guys a story. And I know a lot of you guys like videos like this sometimes where I kind of throw it back. I take you back into a time capsule and we look back on some kind of event in my life, whether it be good or bad. Now, if you're around my age, 30s, late 20s, then you probably remember creepypasta. You remember how big that was online, especially when we were in high school or junior high. You would always see that stuff shared around, and a lot of people believed a lot of that stuff they saw on there. It just kind of got legs of its own, and people actually started to think that some of these things were real. Hell, I'd even venture to say that was the golden age of memes. Nowadays, a lot of memes are overused or recycled or just not funny, whereas this era of memes, some of them were funny and some of them were genuinely terrifying, and they just kind of took on lives of their own. If you guys remember The Rake, that was quite a story. I remember thinking like, there's no way this is real, but you almost didn't want to tempt fate. Well, during that same time, we had the invention of Slender Man from the late 2000s. I believe 2009 was when the character first appeared. And it grabbed everybody. I mean, whether you believe the pictures you saw were real or not, we all kind of somewhat believed in the urban legend. There's got to be something this is based off of, right? No, it was complete and total BS. See, it was this faceless, long-armed, super tall creature that his whole modus operandi was to abduct children. They would just disappear. He'd take them to another dimension. Was he a demon? Was he an alien? Was he an interdimensional creature? We don't know. In my life, few made-up creatures have gotten the legs that Slender Man did. Slender Man was huge. It even sadly inspired a real-life stabbing in the 2010s in Wisconsin by a couple of pre-teenage girls. And I remember that being huge news. They made a documentary about it. Slender Man was featured in video games and inspired other characters in other video games. Slender Man was all over the place. So if you were like me at the time, you were probably wondering, okay, well, where's the movie? Like, we've got to have a movie for this. This thing is way too big. It's just taking over the internet, and everybody is believing that this freaking thing is real. Well, to our surprise, in 2016, it was announced that they were finally making a movie. Now, I don't know if you were like me, but I was really, really excited. I thought with a real budget and a real script that this could actually turn out to be quite a good movie. It was a great idea, and if you put that to film and you really flesh it out, you may have a franchise on your hands. I mean, that's how big Slender Man was. That's the potential that was there for it. So in 2018, when they first released the first trailer for Slender Man, I remember finding myself intrigued. I actually remember thinking specifically to myself with that trailer that it reminded me of the footage from The Ring. There was a lot of this odd imagery that didn't make a whole lot of sense, but you couldn't wait to see the movie because you really wanted to know what it all meant. So that leads us to opening day of Slender Man. And I should have known going into it that with it being delayed a few times that it probably was not something the studio had a lot of confidence in. But I didn't care because I'd been waiting years, ever since I was 15 years old, to see this character on the big screen, to try to truly actualize this thing and terrify me. Well, look, if you guys know me, you know that I try to give leeway to pretty much every movie. Like, I try to find the positive in something. I try to give it something like, well, hey, this was pretty decent. So believe me when I tell you that Slender Man 2018 is one of the biggest piles of dog shit I've ever seen in my life. And it goes even further than that. See, this experience traumatized me in every way that it shouldn't have. Look, first and foremost, this was a terrible theater experience. It was full of teenagers and young kids, which made sense. It was Slender Man. We all wanted to see what they were going to put to the screen. And so they're talking, they're on their phones. I just remember sitting there at multiple points throughout this movie, even though I was pissed off at what I was seeing on screen, thinking, can you please shut up? Not only that, but at one point the projector messed up, so they had to turn the lights back on. We had to wait 15 minutes before they could restart the movie. It was a disaster. So the theater going experience for this movie in and of itself was bad, not including the film that we got itself. And if you guys know anything about me, and I'm sure you're the same way, when you have a bad theater experience like that, even if you saw a movie that wasn't that bad, it can really color your opinions walking out of that movie because you were annoyed or you were frustrated, and that kind of seeped into your viewing of the movie. Unfortunately for Slender Man, it didn't get that easy pass for me because I paid enough attention and then later watched it on streaming months later when it came out, and all of my worst fears were actualized. Look, this movie is god awful, and it frustrated me because this is such a great idea. I mean, there is so much to mine there from this character or to just flat out create. It's such an ambiguous character with ambiguous beginnings. There's no real rules to this character. You could kind of go buck wild and, like I said, really make a franchise out of this thing. Unfortunately, the treatment of Slender Man in this movie is terrible. You'll hardly see the character, and when you do, it is god-awful, atrocious CGI. Now, this wasn't some straight-to-DVD BS, okay? This was Screen Gems. This was a legitimate Hollywood studio behind this movie. They put the money into this movie. I don't know where it went, because sure as shit didn't go into the CGI. And then furthermore, it didn't go into the acting either. Look, Joey King was in this movie, and around this time she was popular because she was in a lot of horror movies in the mid to late 2010s. Unfortunately, she can't even save this thing. All of the acting in it is absolutely atrocious. I swear to God, none of these actors took any acting classes. I'm convinced of that. Look, I could do better than anybody that was in this film. And that's weird because Joey King is not a bad actress, so maybe nobody believed in this script. Furthermore, it's chopped to bits. This thing genuinely seems like there were a dozen reshoots, or it was just cut down. I think it was actually a mixture of both. If I recall, there were reshoots done to this movie. I also know that they cut out a lot of this imagery that really made no sense to shorten the runtime and to not confuse people. They wanted to streamline this thing and make it more straightforward. Unfortunately, when you have a script as flimsy as this one, and performances as bad as this one, and CGI effects as terrible as these ones are, you end up with an amalgamation of shit. And that is exactly what Slender Man is. You know, it's ironic because walking out of the theater, I never want to come out of a theater and immediately go, oh, awful. You know, I want to try to find a saving grace. And I remember my ex-wife at the time said, Slendy deserved better. Well, ironically, so did I, but... So then consider me shocked when I saw this movie actually did pretty well at the box office. See, after I saw it, I was on a whole anti-Slender Man tour. I could not believe this is what we got after years and years of hype. This was the turd that they gave us. I wanted to see this thing flop. I absolutely wanted to see this thing just be erased from everybody's memory within a few months. But the thing made damn near $60 million after getting 8% on Rotten Tomatoes. Why? Because the character itself is so well known and it's such a great concept and there's so much potential there that people wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt. They wanted to see what they were going to get. This is what they got. And it's really disappointing. You know, I cannot stress enough how, like I said, if you're around my age, you remember the stories, you remember the pictures, you remember somewhat of the fear, wondering, yeah, I know this thing was created, but is there any truth there? Usually these things have a little bit of truth to them. So much damn potential gone down the drain. And it sucks. It's really sad because had this thing been good or at least just decent, we could have had a few Slender Man movies by now. Like I said, this one was absolutely terrible. Nobody liked it, and yet it still made money. This thing turned a profit for Screen Gems. This movie was in the black. That is absolutely wild. But there was never a discussion about doing a sequel to this thing. Because it's awful. I mean, genuinely, how do you take something that is so limitless in its potential and just chop it to shit and give this. I mean, it's still to this day one of the most disappointing theater experiences I've ever had for every reason. Not just the theater going experience, but the movie that I watched. And then trying to convince myself, doing mental gymnastics, thinking, oh, I'll watch it on streaming. Maybe my experience at the theater colored my opinion. Only to realize, no, it did not. This movie is just that fucking bad. Furthermore, it's not even scary. There's no suspense here. There's no dread. There's no real, impending doom. This movie is really, really boring. Not a lot happens. And even when you get these, scare scenes, they're so quick and chopped to bits, you don't even have a chance to, ratchet up any tension. It's just there and gone, and you don't even know what you just saw. I mean, this is genuinely one of the worst major studio, big name horror movies that I've seen in my life. And the reason I wanted to do this video is because I stumbled across the Slender Man video the other day on Instagram, and I was like, God, remember Slender Man? And then I remembered the movie. And then I remembered the fallout from the movie. And then I remember how I made a promise to myself after I watched it that second time on streaming to try to give it another chance. I said, I'll never watch this movie again. So I never bought it. I never purchased it. I never did a review for it on my channel, to my knowledge. I could have. Could be wrong. I might have, actually. Don't quote me on that. And honestly, as a horror fan that was really looking forward to this movie because you loved the concept and you lived through the hype of it, there's really no other more disappointing outcome here. You know, imagine being a big Silent Hill fan like my buddy Mark is, and then say the first movie comes out and it's awful. Now, luckily it wasn't. It was very good. But imagine finally getting that to screen and then just getting absolute slop and being like, oh my God, man. I really waited for all of this. It sucks. And it's sad because Slender Man has now died and gone away. The story, nobody cares about it anymore. They had their one chance to strike while the iron was hot, and they gave us a bag of dog poop. And it really sucks. It's one of those things that I'll always be traumatized by. I'll never see Slender Man again and think anything other than wanting to gouge my own eyes out. So yeah, guys, that's a little trip down memory lane of one of the most traumatic and disappointing theater experiences I've ever had for multiple reasons. And I just wanted to rant about that. I wanted to make a video about that because it was just on the top of my mind and I had to get it off my chest. Do you think I'm being too unfair to Slender Man? Do you think I'm being too forgiving to Slender Man? Whatever it is, I want to hear your experience with this movie down below. I want to hear your experience with the IP in and of itself. And I want to hear where you stand today. When you look back on Slender Man 2018, are you as depressed as I am? But whatever it is, discuss it down below in the comments section with me. I want to thank you so much for watching this video. Please leave a like on it. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. This is Nick at the Lost River Drive-In, and I'm pulling out.